least amount of presentations. In fact, this is the first one I've ever done on softball, so I'm nervous. And, but secondly, you know, we didn't have a lot of coaching as kids growing up. And when it comes to technical part, and you say, you know, he wants me to be a technical guy, I probably have less knowledge of the technical side than you guys do. And I'm probably the worst one to be delivering this presentation because I didn't have a lot of technical growing up, but I do like, from the hockey side, that recognizing the technical part is extremely important and to understand it. But also, to become good at the technical part, we have to be able to get it into a language that people can understand. So if we start talking about arm angles and we start talking about all these technical terms, the reality is nobody's going to understand it and nobody's going to be able to relay it to children. So everything that we want to talk about, we want to get it into a language that kids can understand.
Did you say F5?
So my PowerPoint presentation isn't really that important if it doesn't work, but it's more to give you something to look at when I stumble over my words.
Oh, sorry.
So now that I've gotten the point out about Scott putting me up here to poke fun at
I don't think it's going to.
When I started to coach my son in baseball, I was absolutely amazed at how kids threw the ball. And I don't recall having any technical training on how to throw a ball, but I know that somehow we figured out how to throw the ball and throw it with velocity and to throw it correctly. And as I watched children throwing, I was amazed at how it looked. And you know, back in the old days when we were all politically incorrect and we weren't gender sensitive, we called it throwing like a girl. And as I have a daughter, she would say, "You mean they threw it beautifully, Dad?" And the reality is that isn't quite what I meant, but
it's there, you just got to select it.
All right. So how do we get that into actual?
There's an arrow on the just above the time.
Just above the time. Okay. So this guy.
No, the arrow.
To go to the next slide?
Over there?
Yes.
I want to go to the next slide. I want to get into the actual. Oh, that'll work anyway. So what I came to think about was that when we were kids, we didn't have video games and we didn't have quite as many distractions. And what we did was we played a lot outside. And what we did is we threw everything. We threw snowballs, we threw rocks, we threw wild cucumbers in Williamsburg.
Cell phone?
We threw
cell phone?
everything.
Cell phone?
Cell phones as well, but footballs, you know, and everything. It was part of what we did in the schoolyard. And somehow through that, I think we figured out how exactly, you know, to get our arm a little bit better. In my family, we threw our kids. You know, it was what we did. Some people might suggest that, you know what, from the Darwin theory, that we're just getting farther and farther away from where we began, because he's got pretty good form here. Actually, that's a teammate in Kempville. The only thing we seem to be throwing in today's day and age with my kids is the occasional tantrum. But anyway, we threw a lot at that point, and right now, we don't seem to throw as much. So I will put this disclaimer in here that, as I said, I don't think I'm necessarily the one to teach this the best, but I also want to point out that the object of throwing is to get the ball to the right place at the right time. And if you watched that video on speed, the one thing that you saw is that there was no perfect throws there. There was no perfect throws where somebody picks up the ball and does their nice little crow hop and does their whole technical part right. What they did was they got the ball to first base or wherever in time. And I threw these guys up here because the difference in how they accomplished that. And they're all major league pitchers, and that's a little bbit different than what we're going to talk about, but still. I mean, we've got him over there who's directly over the top. We've got Greg Maddox. We've got his head tilted and his body tilted. We've got that, whatever that is.
That just looks painful.
That just looks like it
It
hurts.
looks like some Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, exactly. And then we've got Pedro Martinez, and you know, Scott and I were arguing the other day over a cocktail about the proper arm angle for velocity. And you know, I want to teach kids a nice, easy, you know, arm angle of kind of 90 degrees right there. And Scott says, well, if you want maximum velocity, wouldn't it be better to come right over top? So I did a little research on the internet and found out that they had done some research in Major League Baseball and found that an arm angle straight over the top will add 2 or 3 more miles velocity, or it did on the pitchers who came over the top. Now, Scott was right, and it pained me to say that. But,
I wrote that down in my diary that
yeah.
night.
But it also said that if you look at that, his head is tilted, his body is torqued, and with that came issues in terms of control, and with that came issues in terms of injuries. That over-the-top arm injury, over-the-top was more likely to break down, and the reality is that control becomes a little more difficult. When I started to teach my son's baseball team, I didn't know how to teach either at that point. I didn't know how to break down what I did. So I called in a gentleman, and he's no longer with us to help me, but he came in and did a throwing clinic for me with my kids. Gil Reed came in. So I'll start the way he started, which is with the grip of the softball, okay? And Gil put it into a way that I've said to kids over and over again. He said, you know, you want to treat your ball like an egg. And he said, because what happens if you squeeze your egg too tight? The reality is your egg breaks. He says, what happens if you don't squeeze your egg tight enough? Your egg will break. He said, you want that ball in your fingertips, and you want to have that ball gripped, but not too tight or not too loose. Okay, so what we're aiming for is something that goes across the seams and something that's in your fingertips. And the way to look at that with kids is there's got to be a little bit of a gap right there in your hand. If that ball is back in your palm, you're never going to get the release that you want on your finger. So you've got to have a little bit of a gap right there. That becomes more difficult with smaller kids because, you know, whereas we pick up a ball and use a 2-finger grip, they're going to use a 3-finger grip or some of them even their whole hand. But you still want to try to get that little bit of a gap in there. So that's the grip thing. The next thing that Gil went to was what he called a dance, and kids for some reason like to dance, even the little boys when they're that age. And Gil talked about a dance that he did, and this was to get yourself into a proper position to begin your throw. And I actually, with the kids, we were doing it at a gym, so I did some cutout feet and created the dance steps on the floor so that they would go and make their little dance. And basically what Gil's dance was we always want to start kids in a proper fielding position so that we're ready to receive the ball. But once you catch it, your first step is bringing your foot out like that. Your second step is to there. Okay, now the importance of this position here is your target is that way. So you technically kind of want your knees and your hips and your shoulder pointing towards your target. Okay? But the rest of your body, your belly button, your shoulders, and your knees are kind of pointed perpendicular to that. So they're pointed in that direction. Your back foot toe should be pointed in that direction, but I think you want to open up your front foot a little bit so that it's not quite pointed perpendicular, but something more a little bit like that. Now here was the interesting one that I read recently, and I guess I did it and we do it, but I didn't know to mention it. And that is that anytime you field the ball, whether it be a ground ball or whether it be a pop fly, and you get into your throwing position, your hands end up together, and they end up reasonably high. So even if you field a fly ball, you come to this position right here. Hands together and hands high. And I did that, but I didn't actually realize it until I saw it on a YouTube video, actually. But the reason for that is the next step after you finish your dance is to get yourself into a power position. And I like that we steal all these things from the Can Pitch program and stuff, but from here we've got to get ourselves into what we call our power position. And our power position is technically, we want our arm back like that. We want the ball facing away from us and to see the back of the hand. Now it doesn't have to be perfectly like that, but what we're trying to avoid is having the ball pointing towards our target. We're trying to get some sort of our fingers, and the reason for that is to get the spin that we're looking for. Now, I sort of skipped over the spin part, but that probably would have taken place with the grip. But what you're looking for when you release the ball in your four seams is you're looking for a backspin. Okay, so there's a wrist snap that's involved in there as well. And in order to achieve that, we need to have our ball here so that when we rotate through, we can snap. And it doesn't occur as easily from there as it does from there. So if we figure that this is we go from our dance to our power position, it seems like your arms are moving in opposite directions. So for every action, there's a reaction. So as we go from our hands together here, we want to teach children to pass through this motion here. And I think I've heard it described as a C. We want to go through a C position into an L position. So we want to have them go back and around rather than just going to here. So it's back and around like that. One of the things we did with the kids was we'd have a coach stand behind and get a high five in the end. So that as they came through, they'd go, and we'd give them a high five to try and get that hand turned around so that it's pointed in the right direction.
Why is that? Why do you bring your hand down? It goes
That goes against other NCCP coaches that I've been to. They teach the conceptual, the tool that they gave us to help visualize it for the kids is think of drawing on a bow and arrow. You're not going to go like that with the bow, you're going to just go.
I'm glad I put a disclaimer. The reason why I believe it's taught like that is because it's about motion. And if you bring your arm all the way around like that, you'll generate more arm speed than you will just going from here. So it's about
Momentum, right, Bruce?
momentum, yeah.
Would it be different for a third baseman over an outfielder?
I'll get to that.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, actually, let's talk about that right now. We're talking about teaching children, so we want to teach them the proper way first. But then there's a recognition that each position comes with its own tweaks and whatever. Your shortstop picks it up, and he's kind of a three-quarter guy. He goes sort of more like this, right? Whereas your outfielder, if he's fielding the ball and he's coming in, he's absolutely coming all the way around and over top. And if you think of a catcher picks it up, catches it, and goes to the ear immediately. Right? So each position comes with a separate arm angle or a separate motion, I guess, in the back. But the one thing that you think about is if you're a shortstop, you come out, you take that relay throw here, right? You're going to come down because you want more velocity making that throw to the plate. So you want people to be able to do all of these different things.
Bruce,
Sir?
In football, we release from here.
Yeah.
And I think what the issue is speed of release.
Yeah.
This motion has to do with velocity. And when you think of it as an outfielder, you got to throw it a hell of a lot farther.
Right. Yeah.
For an infielder, this is quickness of release.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and that's what that's about. But I'll throw it to you guys. Do we teach kids to go from here, or do we teach kids, how to throw with maximum velocity first, and allow them to then alter?
I say proper technique first, and then as you say, a third baseman is going deep. Get the guy to take that fly, then trying to make that out again. You're going to come around, but if you got a hot shot coming to you, you're coming from here to here right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you want one?
I guess from my standpoint, when I think about it, I think that it's easier that once you've taught that and you have that proper motion in, then you don't have this built in. Because once that's built in, then it's in there and it's difficult to get out. Right? And I think it's easier for a child to react to a ground ball and instinctively come to here if you've already taught the down, around, and up. And I also think that as we start to talk about problems with throwing, I think that if you just go here, I think you're more likely to have or develop flaws. And your elbow being lower in particular than if you teach to go here, where your elbow is higher, and therefore in a better position. So I think you're less likely to develop a bad habit if you teach it correctly.
I think when you teach them properly that way all the time, they're gonna practice it all the time. So maybe in a game situation, they may shorten that down.
They may shorten
But
down.
how many throws do they make in a game situation, right? But you have them throw like that all the time, and they practice hour after hour. And how does that help, you know, maybe mechanically not sound, but that's what's hurting them. If you teach them that way all the time, yeah, maybe they short it down for a couple throws in the game, but that's not too
Well, and
detrimental to their.
you know, I think because we're not really, when you're talking about teaching young kids, we're not teaching position-specific things either, right? And I think that as you break them into positions, then you start to get more detailed in how you want to throw the ball, and you start developing drills like that to throw the ball from different areas.
If I can add something, I think what we need to do is also recognize that if we're running a Learn to Coach clinic, primarily the coach is there, we twisted the moms and dads' arms to be a coach. And what age group are they typically coaching? Little kids, like maybe 4 years old up to maybe 10, right? So the easier we can simplify the throwing pro. I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but when I teach like Learn to Coach, I just say, give me the letter L, right?
Yep.
And is this a good L? No, because the elbows, it doesn't look
Yep.
symmetric, right? And, you know, and point with your glove hand at the target. If you point down there, more likely the ball will go. You know what I mean? If I run a comp intro, then I get more into what you're saying.
Yeah.
Hold the ball in the
absolutely, yeah.
fingertips, make sure it's this, and
Yeah, I would,
so.
you know, I would talk about in you know, your coach stream, I'd talk about your dance, I'd talk about your grip, you know, I'd talk about the importance of getting the arm at least up to there first, you know, because before you can get to there, you gotta get to there first, and in this power position, and having yourself perpendicular, and having this part lined up is very important as well, you know, in terms of just basic throwing.
Bruce, if you hit the B button when you're talking, if you hit the button B,
Yeah.
it'll shut off, it'll close that so it won't be in your eyes.
Or just close the shutter.
B?
Okay.
On
Yes.
the-
Standard on all?
Yeah, maybe not on that. It might be because, do you have it on a,
Just
I'm
the,
not sure.
okay.
just do the,
On
just do the
most
shutter.
PowerPoints though, if you're, it's true. If you're
Yeah,
in-
there you
No,
go.
there's a shutter on
Hey,
the
wait a
front.
second, that's not technology, that won't work.
Where's the B button?
Yeah. But
That's the N key.
for most of us, if you're using PowerPoint, and like you notice, I just don't want to pick up, but it's in Bruce's eyes when he's talking.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
when you're teaching, we want, like, we're all watching Bruce, we don't want to be distracted by that. So if you hit the button B, it'll black it out and you can talk and that'll
And you
shut it
hit
down.
B to turn it back on.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we are here, okay? And what we want to do from here is we want to get to our target, and we want to get there in a direct line, okay? So we want to take the ball from there, and we want to go into our L position here. And when we do that, because we're starting here and we go up to there, when we do that, there also is a rotation of the hip. So in order to get the ball to there, we want to go back to the same kind of thing we talk about with our hitting or whatever, is we want to get with our hip rotation to there, okay? Very important that we keep that elbow up to the shoulder or above, but we want to get from there to that position right there. Now, the interesting one here, I've read a couple different things, and I'm going to throw it out to you guys, but I've heard that as we're here, that some people point their front elbow towards the pitcher, and some people have a tendency to point their glove towards the pitcher. I've read it both ways. I think where this becomes important is to something else that I recently read is that when we go through our motion and we start to go towards the ball, we want to have our glove kind of the palm pointed towards our chest, and instead of just concentrating on bringing that hand back into a place. We want to concentrate on getting that chest out to meet the glove. Because what happens with a lot of kids is we end our throw here. We release the ball here. But what we want to do is we want to generate power with our body, and we want to have a full arm extension. So what we want to do is we want to bring ourselves out towards that, and to get our chest going forwards, and getting that arm going forwards and releasing the ball out here when it's fully extended with as much power from our body as possible. But one of them is, you point your glove and you come back, or the other one is, your elbow is there, and as you go, there's a little twist, and bring that towards you as you bring your chest towards it. Now, once again, that's not stuff that you're going to necessarily teach in a clinic, but when you're dealing with athletes and you see something that's going wrong in their throw, a lot of times you can kind of pin that down to somebody going like this. That your motion becomes this because your hand is coming around in this direction rather than straight down the hall towards your target. So that front hand seems to be important. And I don't know whether to teach it that way or that way, but I wouldn't alter an athlete if they do it a certain way. Okay?
In other words, don't screw with success.
Don't screw with success, yeah. And that goes back to that first slide, too. If you have a player who's getting the ball there on time, and getting it there with velocity, is it worth messing around with their mechanics and stuff to...
Mike Rennie told me, he said, if you've got a kid who can hit 300 standing on her head, get the killer to damn pillow.
So that leads us to really the most important thing, and the thing that we want to actually... we turn this back on.
Just slide it across.
Slide.
Oh my God, Gary! Hell just got a little colder, friends.
So that gets us, after having gone through some of the technical aspects of it, it gets to the real important part, which is, first of all, we have to identify where the problems are. Secondly, we have to come up with a way to help be able to fix these problems. And this guy he's really cute. Yeah. But he doesn't have a lot going right for him there. There's just a
Red
lot
belt.
of things there that are going wrong. And what do you guys see? What's wrong with that picture?
Stepping with the wrong foot.
Stepping with the wrong foot. That one's a big one. Yep. It's hard to get much body behind it. But that seems to be one of the easiest ones to correct. And if you put that into language with the dance and stuff, it becomes easier to correct with that one. With the girls I have, that's my daughter, by the way. If she knew her picture was up here, she would be mortified. I haven't fixed her entirely yet either, which is too bad. There's a lot going on there. Sorry, what was that? You want to share with everybody?
No, I was laughing at what you said. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
It's a good thing she's not here.
But conversely, the plus side of what that kid is doing, he's leading with his elbow on the throw.
If he
So
actually
that's
switches
a
his
plus.
feet, he'd be in good shape.
But his glove.
Yeah, I mean, that's easier to fix
His
than
hand
someone.
is wrong. The one you want to be careful with
It
leading
looks
with
like
the elbow,
this.
the one you want to be careful with leading the elbow is our dart players, right? As we get that elbow out in front, then you have issues, because then all you're throwing with is that motion there. The elbow has to come with the arm from that point forward, I believe. Now, you guys can think about that, or maybe our can pitch instructor can help. But if that elbow gets out in front, then you're left with
Fly fishing.
fly fishing or whatever.
Darts.
He's got a little hand problem there. I don't think his glove hand is entirely right either, the way that looks. But
No.
Pretty cute.
but he's cute, yeah, for sure.
What if you yell at him?
I don't think
Johnny!
I think he should be around a little more perpendicular. I don't think we want the belly button pointing towards that.
He's gonna over-rotate.
Yeah. Scott's little video there left me with a thought, and I know you like stories. So the first coach I had in Williamsburg, softball got to Williamsburg a little bit late with the kids. There wasn't a lot of great volunteers there, but the first coach we had, he issued us a great line. He said, "Boys, if you make an error, don't make me come and get you." just get off. So things are a little tougher in Williamsburg, I'll tell you that. There wasn't many errors either.
How old were you?
I think we were 9. But it's funny to see the second baseman walking off the field there. He didn't stay with it that long, that coach. I'm not quite sure why. So what about Lucy here? What about what's going wrong there?
She got the shot put at that going, huh?
Yeah.
Both of her.
Beautiful.
Then go back here.
And her fingers rolled underneath the ball too, looks like.
Club behind her back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Her body's
Her
turned.
gloves
There's-
on her
there's
back
just-
all the time.
there's nothing good there. She does have she does have some rotation there, right? But there's no extension to her, and there's no follow through, and that's about as unathletic a stance as you want when you're throwing a ball. I mean, when you throw a ball, you want to finish down, and you want to finish out, and you want to finish with power, right? And the other thing that we talk about, I'll get to in a second here, is that, you know what, when you throw, your next step is that way, right? You've got to come through with a step, not just end your throw right there.
Major league outfielders fall down sometimes, eh? Like
Yeah,
when they really
they
like
throw so hard.
Putting
Yeah.
everything into it, yeah.
Yeah, it's and in baseball, they probably teach it differently because of the size of the field and because of the fact that it makes a much bigger difference 2 miles an hour on a throw from right field fence than it does in softball, you know. But it's important that you develop drills for kids to teach them arm angles too. You know, you think back to that first slide where that guy's coming from under here and is about to become a Tommy John candidate. But you think of a shortstop running, picking up a ball,
Yeah.
and just firing it from down there with an arm angle that's more Kent to Colby or like that guy in the picture. You have to teach kids to throw from other arm angles. You know, a shortstop picks up the ball, goes to second base, he's going like that. He's not going to pick up the ball, turn, face, and go like that. He's going to make it quick, turn, and like that if he's close, because it's about speed. So lots of ways we can fix that. I was kind of hoping you guys would give me a couple of drills because that's my problem right there. So how do we? Well, actually, you know what? I'll go ahead.
Not doing your work, man.
So one of the things that I talked about yesterday just briefly was the importance of what they do in can pitch, which is breaking this down, you know, into a warm-up format. When we start our girls pitching, and none of them are accomplished at it yet, we always start with this. You know, we start with that, and then we come to here, and we go from there. You know, and then we add in the back foot coming up. You know, and then we add in a step and a back foot, and then we add in something else. So there's a five-piece warm-up that they do before they take a pitch, right? And we talk about the power line and all that stuff, but we don't seem to do that for overhand. We just grab the ball, we say go out and play catch, you know, and they continue. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just
No,
gonna
go ahead.
just answer your question. I've coached U10 and U12 actually twice because I have 2 daughters.
Yeah.
So now I've gone through that process with the U10s now going into the first year U12s. And what I've done is just really isolate the body. So, you know, before they even start stepping and throwing, I get them either down on one knee,
Down on one knee, that's good, yeah.
or if they want to stand, because you got to mix it up, right? Because the little kids get bored doing the same thing all the time. Or they're standing this way and then just opening up and just using, you know, make sure that they're doing this, okay? And it's a progression. You want to start here and you want to finish here, and then follow through as you're flicking the ball, and then following through and finishing opposite knee. And then once they get that right, and it's always pointing to your target as you're opening up and doing this, once they get that right, then you start introducing the lower body. Because you want to isolate, you want to start from here down, and then you get them stepping and throwing.
Yeah, that's great. That's I think that's the way you have to teach this. And